Hi, good evening. Good morning, class. We are here for the lesson recording of uh, Unit 9, Art and Man. Basically, this chapter has three objectives. One, to conceptualize how artists affirm identity, their identity as an artist, and how we can probably try to understand, uh, do some kind of reading in relation to the identity of the art and the artist. Two, to interpret ways how people go through a creative process. This process is called, will be discussed here as soul making. And three, to demonstrate creativity through a creative output. I believe we're going to do an assessment. Mag-quiz po tayo dito. Okay, enough with creative outputs. And there will be some reading materials. However, let me go through and begin with the introduction, art, and man. Of course, having come this far, we have already discussed, and based on our guesting with my artist friend, we were able to understand how artists actually represent a part of themselves through their canvas and their work. And it says here, how do artists continue to affirm identity? Siguro yung kanilang pagkakakilanlan, yung kanilang identity ay natural lang uh, na ilalabas doon sa kanilang canvas. Maybe it's also a byproduct. It's like having a footprint. Their work is a footprint in itself. So it's a profound question, but I think we all kind of get it as to the connection of the artist work and the art's identity. Even if we say it's professionally done, it's still very much personal. And you cannot actually take away uh, the personal touch, okay, and the story of the artist into their work, the personality of the artist into their work. Magkakambal yan eh. Okay? After all, yung puhunan nila sa paggawa ng kanilang obra ay yung kanilang estilo, paniniwala, at yung kanilang pagkatao, their personality. So therefore, their identity. Okay? So moving on, identity is the way we perceive and express ourselves. Of course, it is us. And when we try to look at the factors and conditions, okay, that an individual is born with, yeah, uh, identity is, as we have learned in our psychologies, also the collective uh, embodiment of our different selves, physical self, material self, sexual self, and even up to the spiritual self. We all know that. And so when you try to take a look at a, a piece of art, the identity is actually ingrained, okay, right into the canvas. Okay? So it says, so moving on, many aspects of a person's identity change. Of course, that's why even when you try to look at Pollock's work or any artist's work, you would see the changes into their style as they grow. So you can say the young Picasso's uh, work is different into the old Picasso. Even the young Luna's work is different from the old Luna. So as the artists change, also is their artwork. It is therefore the art is also a reflection of the chronology of the changes that goes on into the artist's life. So we have here the Mona Lisa was taken as a very good example, just to uh, pick on the discussion that when you talk of Leonardo da Vinci, uh, you would know that his footprint, his soul is embedded in every famous work that he has. And taking the Mona Lisa, for example, uh, it's very much like Leonardo. Okay, what does it mean? Well, it's actually a very long unmasking. However, his style, there would be consistencies into his style. And as they say, even when somebody will try to fake, try to consistently fake, Hey, how do you know it's still not genuine? Because you cannot exactly copy the identity being embedded. You may get the style, but not the personality. Experts actually know how to read the personality. They try to go into the mind of Da Vinci so that they will know if this piece of work is a fake or not. Okay? I'm going to play a short video here just for us to understand this on a more comprehensive level. It's all about the art of fakery, and let's try to know how do they know what's real and not real. Tingnan po natin ito. Okay, let's try to play this one.
Oh, is this a Picasso?
I mean, I do Picassos. Sometimes I can do 2 or 3 in a day before breakfast, you know, because they're not that difficult. And I gave one to a friend of mine. He sold it. Someone bought it. And they took it to the auction, and they valued it at $1 million.
Forgery is one of the greatest challenges the art world faces today, with fakes and misattributions estimated to be as high as 50% of all works in the art market.
Sold. 6 million too.
To combat this, there has sprung a multi-billion-dollar industry of authentication services. However, away from the premier art circuit, there is a blind spot where forgeries get through with ease. I'm on my way to meet David Henty and Billy the Brush Mumford, 2 convicted forgers who have made thousands selling their fakes on eBay. The 2 lads like to go to this car boot sale to find historical materials appropriate to whatever they're forging. Although they claim to have hung up their forgery boots, they're going to show me how they would fake a painting. Then I'm going to take that painting to one of London's premier authentication services to see if they can clock it's a fake.
Quick, Billy, quick. Yeah.
Sydney.
Hiya. How you doing?
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Billy.
Nice to meet you. Take me through this license plate.
Van Goghs. I got Van Gogh as well.
Have you?
Yeah, and I got.
Bought all the Van Gogh options.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just buying one, FOR 63R forger, which is.
What have you got here?
Billy's got a load of catalogues, so I'm going to be looking through these later on this afternoon and thinking, oh, if I get a little canvas like that,
Yeah.
you know, I'll stick something on. You know, you get some good ideas from here.
We're going to go down to the market now, but just before that, unfortunately, I served some time in a prison about 2 or 3 minutes away, so we might go via there.
We can't.
How much?
Nice selection,
1,
David.
2, 3,
Let's
4,
get them out
5,
before we
6,
talk. I
7,
can't talk
8,
money in the
8.
dark, Dave. I cannot talk money in the
Where's
dark.
that chair? In case I faint at the price. See his rusty nails.
Oh, how did they get like that?
With the salt water, I expect.
Why would anyone want rusty nails?
Pissed the hell out of me. I don't know. I think it's time. Passage of time, really. I don't think it's a chemical process.
3.
No, don't lump
4,
them all together,
5,
Dave.
6, 7,
They're
8, 9.
individual prices, David. Individual price. This one, beautiful, 90 quid.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
You adding it up? 70 quid.
What?
Well, sure. This, 1 1/4. Done. This one here, for my friend as a gift. Nothing. Garnish.
It's
Nothing.
nice, that little one, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's a
lovely.
little Italian painting.
Yeah,
there.
you adding these on?
Yeah.
Good.
So what's that, 375?
Yeah.
I have to owe you 40 quid, 20 quid.
Mazel tov. Pleasure to meet you all.
I wish I could say it was a pleasure.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Come here, you schmuck.
There's a
So you've got a Caravaggio.
Caravaggio. I think there's another one. Oh, there's Caravaggio there as well. Salvador Mundi.
That went for the most money ever at auction,
Yeah.
didn't it?
It did 450
150
million, yeah. 6.5 foot Basquiat. You could take that and do the forensics on it,
Yeah.
and it would come back as genuine.
Really?
Yeah. There's another Modigliani there, Basquiat.
How often are you doing these paintings?
Every day, I get up every day and I work 7 days a week just because I really enjoy it.
Oh, is this a Picasso?
I mean, I do Picassos, you know. Sometimes I can do 2 or 3 in a day, you know. They're not that difficult. And I gave one to a friend of mine. He sold it. Someone bought it. And they took it to the auction, and they valued it at $1 million. And they had quite a lot of interest in it. But came out in the papers that this forger said it's his. The guy who owned it started threatening, and he told a friend of mine that goes in there that buys stuff, you know, tell him I'm going to get someone to burn his house down or put
Your house?
my house, yeah, put a firebomb through the letterbox. So well, I reported it to the police, and I got all cameras put up in the front of my house and stuff. I just said on Twitter, I said, look, do due diligence. You know, if you're selling £1 million painting, get it authenticated.
So did it sell?
And was all the TV cameras were there and the news channels were, and it flopped. I think they said they sold it for 8,000.
Amazing, quite a view.
Yeah, it's good.
Did you often work out here?
Yeah, if I can, I love to work out here just because it's, yeah, it's nice, it's peaceful, you know. I'm gonna paint a little seascape.
So how much have you studied Lowry then to understand how he paints down to a T?
So I've been to the Lowry Gallery. I bought every book I can find about Lowry. When you've stepped in their shoes, you understand a bit more than an academic. You're actually living it. But this one I'm making up.
Are you making up?
So I put a bit of sky.
So it could be like a lost Lowry that's just ended up at auction.
Well, it might well do.
Do you think there are any problems with art forgery?
Well, I think there's a lot of problems with people making money off dead artists, you know, and that didn't make any money in their own lifetimes, you know. There's more of a problem with that, I would have thought. You know, you're an ordinary girl, you love Picasso or you love Modigliani. You haven't got 5 million or 10 million or 100 million. But I still want a painting. Yeah. I don't want to print a lifeless print. So, you know, is that wrong? I think the basic thing is I don't care about the money. I love the art. When I go to bed at night, I can't wait to get up in the morning. If I'm working on, you know, something that I really, really like, you're in your own world, basically. If I was a multi-millionaire, I'd still get up in the morning and paint pictures.
Obviously, technology's advanced. Do you think that makes it harder to make good forgeries?
No.
No.
No. I think you can beat the forensics, and the rest is about good craftsmanship, really.
So what do you think?
Well, passable.
Okay, well, give me a call when it's ready, and I'll take it to the lab.
Okay.
And I'll let you know how it goes.
Okay. As long as we go halves on it.
Okay, deal. So I dropped off David Henty's Lowry the other day, and they're going to run a few tests, so fingers crossed for David. Hello, I'm Sydney. There it is.
Here it is. So here's the Lowry, basically dismantled. In taking it out of its frame, the tape's still quite sticky, which means it wasn't on there for a long time. Taking the painting out, he's clearly used one of these old notebooks, 1955, so no question about it. This is old. This isn't particularly impressive. Now we're going to take that and have a look down the microscope. Straight away we can see that it's very yellowed looking, and this is typical of forgeries because you want the object to look old. And if you just paint it in nice, fresh, bright colors, it's going to look new. There's no obvious cracking. And yes, we've got an obvious fake patina. You see it right away. We did find what we think is a pet hair.
They have 2 dogs.
Old master artists. We're really careful about their materials, and you don't find dog hairs. So now that we've, with our tiny scalpel, taken our tiny samples, we're going to take them to the lab and see what we've got.
There's a pattern to genius. There's a method.
Some samples from the Lowry painting.
So what's this machine?
It's actually one of our best tools for looking for forgeries. It does the best job of anything in this room for looking for modern 21st century pigments.
Is there any way that anyone could trick these machines?
No. So now we'll go have a quick look at our imaging room where we'll be taking an X-ray as well as the Lowry. The way this works is the painting's placed in the chassis, and then the camera moves. So it's like Google Earth. You get lots of little tiny images that are then put together in a computer, and you can zoom in and zoom out. It's like having a microscope without a microscope. So one of the most famous quotes, which is actually on David Henty's website, is, "I am a simple man and I use simple materials, ivory black, vermilion, Prussian blue, yellow ochre, flake white, and no medium." However, we found cadmium red instead of vermilion. We're accumulating evidence, and the evidence
It's not looking good.
It's not pointing in the right direction. Here's our X-ray of the Lowry. As you can see, it's kind of not very controlled looking strokes. And looking at other Lowrys, we see that there's kind of a control.
So David was often selling on eBay. Do you think that means that there's a bit of a blind spot for getting these kind of Lowrys through?
Yeah, I mean, it's for all sorts of things. People love to make discoveries, but it's really buyer beware. If you're not an expert, if you're getting a bargain, it's probably not a bargain. I think for the market he's shooting at, for doing something to sell on eBay, he's going to fool the average punter who's not an expert. But copying things for profit, that's deception, and that's where it becomes a criminal act. Forgers will speak about channeling, you know, the dead artist as if it was some sort of psychic gift they had, which is all hugely dodgy. It's just justification for profiting on someone else's genius.
So is David Henty for you? He's not an artist, he's a criminal?
Yeah, basically. And he's a bit overrating himself to say Judge is the best copyist in the world.
Okay. Won't let him know.
Kevin.
Hi David, how are you? It's Sydney.
Yeah, good. Hiya, how you doing?
I'm good. I just left art analysis.
Oh, have ya?
I think it went well.
Oh, really?
Well, you sound surprised. There was one problem with like the paint, the type of white paint. And there was the vermilion. Apparently the vermilion was wrong.
I didn't know that. I didn't think they'd pick up on it. I mean, I didn't do it to fool anyone, really, you know.
No, of course not, David. There's literally no way you could have got past her. Honestly,
Really?
yeah. There's no way. Bye, David. Oh, he's so sweet. I thought he was going to get like a bit miffed, but I've encouraged him to keep forging.
So that's it. I hope you were able to keep your eyes open and try to digest the story. But in case you dozed off, we'll try to point two things there. So there's this forger, David, who thinks he can forge, he can copy a Picasso to Lowry. These are artists. And one of the things that should have struck you, sabi niya, paano niya kinokopya yung work ng mga artist? He would go to the library and try to read on the life of an artist, of the artist. In that case, was Lowry. And he tries to go into their shoes. So they copy the style, they try to understand the identity. But not everything can be known. It's actually the strokes. Even ngayon with the technology and those that would go into forensics, there is now a thing called art forensics, the study of any criminal activity that has something to do with forgery, because forgery is, of course, a criminal act. There's nothing, of course, it's quite creative, but there's nothing legal about it. It's not legal. And why would they want to copy somebody else's work? Why would an artist try to assume somebody else's identity rather than making their own, right? That's the funny part. However, well, of course, these famous artists have already created a name for themselves. Alam natin yan. And their identity is already valued way beyond their time. Van Gogh, during his time, was worth nothing. He was killed. He was murdered, branded as a weird artist, someone who cannot even paint, someone who only paints roots. Clumsy daw. However, today his work is valued millions. And it's not about the lousiness even, it's about the identity, the Van Gogh-ness of that work and the story that makes it valuable. So yun yung first point doon. Of course, the second point is that technology again will try to vindicate and validate and guard the work of the masters. Nakita nga doon yung work ng hair, dog hair. Old masters don't have pet dogs. So when they work, hindi kasama doon yung dut-dut ng aso, ganyan. So that's actually what makes their work quite unique. And no matter what trick forgers would use, like they use yellows, they would use even rusted nails, and they would even try to use old notebooks with the date 1955. It's quite obvious. However, well, technology today is quite complicated, sophisticated. So ayan, I hope you were able to learn something from that. And so this module is all about creating identities, understanding the identities of an artist, and what makes an artist an artist. Okay, somehow it's their identity as artists. And the second part of the module is something to do with soul making. Just to understand, well, this part, because it was just written in bullet form, so we go ahead and try to look into uh, Google, of course. I found this article, a good article, wherein we can probably try to understand, okay, what soul making is. You remember Heidegger? If you have probably discussed Heidegger in any of your philosophy subjects, he calls creativity an act of poiesis, which is the root word for poetry. It's something to do with a creative process. So basically, when you say soul making, pwede natin itong una ihalin tulad sa isang proseso o isang word na, you know, when you say soul searching, okay, paghahanap. Anyway, soul making is different. Bakit ka mag-soul searching? Siguro na wala mo yung kaluluwa mo. Bakit ka mag-soul making? Mag-disintegrate daw yung kaluluwa mo. Yun yung sinabi dito. Okay. Ano yung pagkakaiba nun? Let's see. When human beings fall apart through the rigors of life, this thing called life, and they lost that zest, that zen, that sparkle, and they probably go through a void. They go through nothingness. They integrate, and yung lack of wholeness. So hence, people may sometimes go into a creative process to reunite. Okay. So yun yung soul making. Yung soul searching is, you know, they're typical of people when they go, when things fall apart, like their marriage, their love life, and they try to look for answers. They try to reflect why things happened the way it happened. Okay, but soul making is probably a related but entirely different process. Something to do to be more creative. But when you do soul searching, you don't have to be creative. So parang gets niyo ba yung difference? Sorry, things like that. Okay. So poiesis is an integrative affirmation into form. This is the connection between soul making and its arts. Poetry as a genetic term for artistic activity. So it says here, the soul finds its form in art. So that explains why art is necessary for you to find it. The soul. Well, art has the ability to connect to our innermost sanctum. Like when we sing, when we dance, when we paint, we go through intensive reflection. And that reflection, whatever it is, no matter how ugly or beautiful, we try to draw it out through a creative catharsis. And the byproduct is art, be it dancing, painting, or a song. So I think basically this is already now clear to you guys what we mean by soul making. So we can now go back to the module. Yes? Okay. So soul making and arts. We need arts to go through the process of cathartic creativity. And when we find our sense of wholeness to art. Maybe that's what artists find it addicting. Maybe that's what artists are looking for and why they're grounded into their work. Because by doing in their work, they keep their soul. They always are connected with their essence, not only with their personality, but okay, with their spirituality. Siguro ganun. So, sabi dito, an alternative venue for knowing ourselves, yes. Okay. When you look into the depths and real meaning of what you are doing in everyday life, when you form stories, transform brief moments into images and symbols. Okay. Soul making is also when we connect with people, understand culture, and embody tolerance and peace. That is also soul making. So these are probably giving us the different ways and means and how we go through the process of soul making through arts and other related activities. Okay. By developing the artist in us, we awaken the art that has been stagnant. And it opens the doors for multiple intelligence. Yes. Specifically that of expression and, of course, creativity. An exploration and application of the imagination of in an active way, of course. In making art, an artist or artisan or even an ordinary person utilizes imagination to survive and live. Of course, imagination is an important tool in developing an artwork. It's also another point. It's like you cannot be soul making without imagination. And you remember what my friend told me. Somebody asked the question, paano ano yung mas mahirap, yung merong kinokopya or yung galing sa isip mo? Sabi ng friend ko na artist si Abby, syempre mas mahirap yung galing sa isip mo. Di ba? Kasi you really have to make sure that that is original. That, well, with the issue on copyrights and IPRs, more or less, yun yung concern ng mga artist ngayon. And so their imagination is really maxed out, optimized, the creativity, and with all the ethics that they need to go through. Anyway, moving on. Imagination is always dependent on the action and plays a major role in art production, of course. Soul making can be an innate gift or a learned skill or a combination of both. So probably this will try to answer the question, can we all do soul making? And the answer is yes. Lalabas yan sa exam kunyari, and the answer is true. Anybody can go through this process called soul making. Because others nga lang have a gift for soul making. Artists have this gift. Apparently, they can seem to go through parang andarin nilang ma-inspired. They can transmute any experience into soul-making activities. And while others might probably learn this as a skill, and others may have a combination. So, therefore, even when we say we are not all of us are artists, we can all go through the soul-making process, which is a creative process. Like I asked you to sing or dance, and most of you were able to do it and enjoyed it. But it doesn't mean that all of you are good at it. Others are good, others are excellent. Si Teacher Red, hindi. Di ba? Kita nyo naman, trying hard. However, I still was able to find the essence, do soul making. And in fact, some of the songs that I did, okay, no matter how lousy, really touched me emotionally. Nagkatharsis ako kasi nailabas doon para nakaka-relate ako dun sa ibang kanta. No? Okay, so anyway, I think that is soul making. And enough with that, we go through the categories of soul making. In crafting images, okay, we will go through that process. In crafting stories also, and in crafting instruments. When you say crafting images, this could be through painting, sculpting. Now, of course, it's photography also. With technology today, with the cell phone, you can actually craft images, capture your stories, and go through the soul making process. And post it on your Facebook, on Instagram. And that is a soul making process of your personal encounters, personal experiences. So you don't have to be an artist to really come up with your craft. Crafting images is one of the most common soul making things that we have. Crafting stories. Not only do you need to be a poet, but with your stories, criticisms, commentaries. Kahit na-post mo lang sa Facebook, kunyari may pinagdaanan ka, or merong issue na gusto mong ilabas, and you want people to like, to confirm, validate, and that is already crafting story, and therefore, an essence of soul making. Sa paggawa din daw ng mga instruments, no? Sabi dito, an instrument maker is a bridge towards the unknown because the instrument produces sounds. So the soul is accompanied by a vessel so that the soul will not vanish. Instruments also are powerful tools as not only musical instruments as siguro ang sinasabi dito, no? But when you try to create an object that will actually be used for any creative catharsis, then okay, probably you will also go through that experience, okay, because you know that you're doing something good. And crafting movements. When you life is full of movements, filled with various beats. Not only when you try to dance, but probably when you engage in sports. Also, that's also well, sports is not arts, but it's an entirely different field. But I believe we can come up with an analogy here that just like when sports men and women try to have that drive to really find their passion in their sports, like artists are not only unidimensional beings. This would go for those people who actually use their body. Hindi lamang yung dancers, no, but the soap opera singers, the actors and actresses, those who are in the movie industry. Siguro ito yung kasama dito. Okay? So basically, wrapping up this portion, these are the 1, 2, 3, okay, 4 categories of soul making. So we move on to the 7 Da Vincian principles. This is actually the sequel to the statement earlier when we said if you want to know the identity of Da Vinci through his work, you must know that according to this book, 7 Steps to Genius Every Day by Michael Gelb, he's actually trying to say that if you want to know more about Da Vinci, you would actually know the principles that actually guide his work. And he called this the Da Vincian principles. And here you would have them on the table, like 1, curiosita. I don't know if I'm saying this right. Okay, demonstrazione. 2, 3, sensazione, sensation. Sfumato, art, ciencia, arts and science. And corporalita and cognition. And you would have on the second column here the definition and some tips. So for example, moving up to the first one, of course, this is curiosity basically. And saying that one of the Da Vinci principles, as sinasabi kasi dito, you want to be a Da Vinci, okay, you must check. Here are the 7 principles that can actually, you want to copy Da Vinci, you want to know the Da Vinci Code, parang ganon, what makes Da Vinci, ganon, no? Eh, sabi kasi dito, Da Vinci is almost the epitome, the perfect man. Parang sinabi nga dito na global archetype. So here are just some of the principles. Sinabi na Da Vincian principle kasi parang nakikita daw ito kay Da Vinci. He has that insatiable curiosity. And so it says here as an elaboration on the tip column that great minds go on asking confounding questions with the same intensity throughout their lives. Leonardo's childlike sense of wonder and insatiable curiosity, his breadth and depth of interest. So ganun daw siya. He's always curious. He's always interested to know. Okay? And with that, he would fill his notebooks with questions, observations, contemplations, notes, pictures, drawings, and dami-dami. So parang hindi tumitigil yung kanyang utak. Parang naka-manic mode palagi, kumbaga sa bipolar. And okay, the second principle would be that of demonstrazione, a commitment to test knowledge, to demonstrate, perhaps. I think that's okay. These are Italian words, so in English, I believe that's what it is. And sabi dito, when exercises are grouped as examine experiences, check your beliefs. Okay, learn from mistakes. Okay, the ability to demonstrate, learn from your mistakes, create affirmations, and learn from anti-role models. Like Da Vinci would not be worried. He would always test what he thinks. He would always go through the scientific method just to check if he's right or he's wrong. And if he's wrong, it's okay, then he would test it again. And then to confirm that indeed he is wrong. And then the third one, the continual refinement of the senses, sensation. Leonardo reflected sadly that average human looks without seeing, listens without hearing, touches without feeling, eats without tasting, moves without physical awareness, inhales without awareness of other, or fragrance, and talks without thinking. Itong last ang medyo malala. Talking without thinking. Yeah. If you don't think, you better not talk. Okay? So, you want to be a Da Vinci, one of the Da Vinci Code would be, you have to have that, if I would take it from a psychological point of view, the consciousness, being in the here and now. The Buddhists would also call that mindfulness. If you are eating, eat. Don't eat and talk at the same time. Ikaw ba yun? Kumakain ka tapos pagkatapos kaya ng isang minuto, naubos mo na, parang hindi ka kumain. Nakadalawang rice ka na pala. Hindi mo namnamin. Okay? People thinking, listening without hearing. Nakikinig ka, ganyan. So you call this selective perception, sort of. And Da Vinci is not comfortable with this concept of selective perception. We must be grounded on sensations of the body, feelings, senses. Enjoy what you eat. Be aware of what you see. Ngayon nga, nakikita mo na nga ayaw mo pang tingnan, di ba? Kasi isa lang tinitingnan mo. But anyway, things like that. And the fourth one is called sfumato, literally going up in smoke. A willingness to embrace ambiguity, paradox, and uncertainty. Yun ang ibig sabihin nito. Looking at sets of questions in your notebook and see which one causes greatest sense of uncertainty and ambivalence. Describe the feeling of ambiguity. Ambiguity is hindi mo alam, yung sense of loss. Jakam mo, things like that. Ewan. Okay. And of course, the questions here would be just an exercise for us to be more mindful. So, Da Vinci, as brilliant as he is, isn't always sure about himself. He embraces the ability to be in an ambiguous state, to be not sure, meaning to be open. So once in a while, it's also nice for us to question ourselves and live the what if I am wrong. Minsan naman mag-doubt tayo na baka mali ako. Kasi mahirap yung lagi kang sigurado na tama ka. Minsan naman, okay lang daw na, embrace natin yung ambiguity, yung paradox and uncertainty. Your life doesn't always need to be planned the way you wanted it. Diba? So, yeah. And moving on, we have arts and sciences, the development of balance between arts and science, logic and imagination, whole brain thinking, the left and the right brain, yung ibig sabihin nun. Okay? And Leonardo is a scientist not to be too strictly left and too strictly right. So he would always go for the whole brain approach. Of course, you learn this in your other psychology subjects, right? So there you go. The sixth Da Vinci code or principle would be the cultivation of grace, ambidexterity, fitness, and poise. Corporalita. So maybe they see that those characters in Da Vinci. He has the grace, he has the ambidexterity. Ambidextrous, yun yan. Very flexible, virtuoso, okay. Fitness. Okay. You develop a regular exercise, okay. You use an anatomy and you have, it's something to do with being whole, physically whole, physically healthy, fit. And 7 would be a recognition of the connection, okay, something to do with connection, recognition and appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things and phenomena. Ang lahat ng bagay ay magkaugnay, something like that. And despite the fact that we live in a highly specialized world, okay, highly compartmentalized, departmentalized, of course, Renaissance masters would always think on a holistic level, meaning, the zenness, the interconnectedness of things. So these are, okay, taken from the book of Gelb on how to think like Leonardo da Vinci and 7 steps to genius every day. So this book is trying to encourage us to have these Da Vinci principles. And of course, we don't know if Da Vinci indeed exhibited all these throughout his life, but according to the experts that have studied his life, he apparently had these, and that is why they try to, they try to come up with, we are trying to replicate the identity of Da Vinci so we can all be Da Vinci's. Do you get it? So this chapter is all about trying to unravel the identity of the masters or of an artist and see why and how we understand art as only a periscope, okay, into the life of the artist. Amen. And I think this ends the chapter, and thank you so much for listening. Have a nice day, everyone.